been News Roundup, a compilation of major stories in the week ending. I'm Tunde Alabi. Thank you for being part of the program today. British Prime Minister Theresa May has accused Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn of abandoning Brexit for failing to accept the invitation to meet with her to discuss solutions to the Brexit crisis in the country. Speaking at the Prime Minister's question time, Mr. Corbyn said that the Prime Minister's door may be open, but her heart is closed as she is inflexible.
After the overwhelming defeat of her deal, the Prime Minister says she wants solutions to the Brexit crisis that command sufficient support in the House. The Chancellor and the Business Secretary agree, and I quote, "There is a large majority in the Commons opposed to no deal." So will the Prime Minister listen to her own Cabinet members and take no deal off the table?
What I, members of the Cabinet and the whole government are doing is working to ensure that we leave the European Union with a deal. And that is the way to avoid no deal, to leave the European Union with a deal. But I say to the right honourable gentleman that what I have been wanting to do and have been doing with members across this House is sit down and talk about how we can secure support in this House for a deal. The right honourable gentleman has been willing to sit down with Hamas, Hezbollah and the IRA without preconditions, yet he won't meet me to talk about Brexit. In this case, he's neither present nor involved.
Mr. Speaker, actually, I did reach out to the Prime Minister last September when I offered to discuss our deals with her. And it appears, Mr. Speaker, that while the door to her office may well be opened, apparently the minds inside it are completely closed. She has shown no flexibility whatsoever in taking no deal off the table. The Chancellor reassured business that amendments would be put down that would have the effect of removing the threat of no deal, which is binding and effective. Given that those amendments are now tabled, will the Prime Minister confirm that, if passed, they would rule out no deal?
The right honourable gentleman, what we have seen is amendments seeking to engineer a situation where Article 50 is extended. Now, that does not solve the issue. There will always be a point of decision, and the decision remains the same. No deal, a deal, or no Brexit. I'm delivering on Brexit. I want to do it with a deal. Why won't he come and meet me and talk about it?
The only consistency in her strategy seems to be running down the clock on this by threatening no deal as an alternative to her dead deal. The CBI, Mr. Speaker, says the projected impact of no deal on the UK economy would be devastating. Leaving with no deal would be a hammer blow to manufacturing industry in this country, costing jobs and damaging living standards. Last week, the Justice Secretary was asked if he ruled out a customs union. He said, "I don't think we can." However, the same day, the Leader of the House said that we cannot be in a customs union. Can the Prime Minister be clear? Does her government rule out a customs union with the European Union?
The right honourable gentleman talks about a customs union, and I note that he's put an amendment down which refers to, well, the Labour Party used to refer to a comprehensive customs union, then it was a new customs union, now it's a permanent customs union. But the question, I'm happy to sit down and talk to him about what he means by that. Does he mean accepting the common external tariff? Does he mean accepting the common commercial policy? Does he mean accepting the union customs code? Does he mean accepting EU state aid rules? If he won't talk about it, there's only one conclusion. He hasn't got a clue.
Mr. Speaker, my question was, does the Prime Minister rule in or rule out a customs union? It's not complicated. She could have said yes, she could have said no. Mr. Speaker, it's a key part of what Labour is putting forward, and it's backed by the TUC, representing millions of workers. by the CBI, representing thousands of businesses. It's backed by the First Ministers of Wales and Scotland, and indeed by many members of her own party, including apparently her own Chief of Staff. So can the Prime Minister explain why is she ruling out a customs union as a solution to the crisis? She could, for once, actually answer the question.
Perhaps I can try to help the right honourable gentleman here, because I think when many people talk about a customs union, what they want to ensure is that businesses can export to the EU without facing tariffs, quotas, or rules of origin checks. Now, I agree, and the deal we negotiated delivers just that. But it also allows us to have an independent trade policy and do our own trade deals with the rest of the world. The benefits of a custom union and the benefits of our own trade policy.
Mr. Speaker, the International Trade Secretary promised 40 trade agreements the second after Brexit. And this morning, he couldn't name a single one. His own business minister said he was not impressed by sham trade agreements and not prepared to sell business down the river for other people's political dogma. So why is the Prime Minister prepared to sell people's jobs and living standards down the river rather than negotiate a customs union that would be part of a sensible deal for the future?
The deal that we negotiated did protect jobs, and it was rejected by this House. There are some specific issues. There are some specific issues that members across this House have raised in relation to that deal, and we work on those. We've already responded on a number of issues, on parliamentary involvement, on workers' rights, on citizens' rights, as a result of the conversations that we've had with members of this House. But what we want to ensure is that we get a deal that does protect jobs. But the right honourable gentleman is doing exactly what he always does. He just stands up, uses these phrases, and the honest answer is I don't think he knows what those phrases mean and what the implications of those phrases are. We will be protecting jobs in the UK with a good trade relationship with the European Union and enhancing and increasing jobs in the UK. And by the way, I see the right honourable gentleman hasn't referred to the employment figures this week, where we see employment up in this country as a result of this government.
Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister clearly didn't have time to mention was the rising levels of in-work poverty, personal debt, and the problems people face in surviving at work. Mr. Speaker, the door of office might be open, but the minds are closed, and the Prime Minister is clearly not listening.
And in the US, federal workers are now groaning with some queuing up for groceries from charities. The partial shutdown of the US government has entered the second month. Neither President Trump nor the Democratic-led Congress was ready to back down on their demands.
Government workers line up for free groceries in Washington, a helping hand at a time of need. There's no end in sight to the partial government shutdown, and politically, both sides appear to be dug in. President Trump remains adamant about funding for a wall along the southern border.
Well, I hope that Speaker Pelosi can come along and realize what everybody knows. I mean, no matter who it is, they know that walls work, and we need walls.
Democrats remain firmly opposed to wall funding, including Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
We want the symbol of America to remain the Statue of Liberty, freedom, equality, not a divisive wall. And we will fight for that. Fight for that, we will.
Those who remain caught in the middle are government workers, either on furlough or working without pay, like FBI agent Tom O'Connor.
FBI agents should not have to go work at a store stocking shelves because they can't feed their families on their government job.
Politically, the shutdown helps no one, says Jim Kessler.
Trump is losing on this, Congress is losing on this, and then federal workers who are without pay are losing on this.
Several recent polls have put more of the blame for the shutdown on Trump, says John Fortier.
I mean, public opinion polls, I think, are more against the president than against the Democrats. His numbers have suffered, but just a small amount. And so I think the both sides feel their bases are committed to these differences in principle, and that makes solving this much more difficult.
Democrats also appear unified to defy the president, says Jim Kessler.
Democrats aren't really eager to fund a campaign promise of Donald Trump that he said Mexico was going to pay for. And so we're locked in a duel right now, and somebody's going to have to blink or find a creative way out.
For the moment, neither side appears willing to budge, notes Larry Sabato.
It's hard to see how it will end, but it's bound to end. And both sides will have to give something. Exactly what they'll give is just a question mark right now.
Analysts predict the shutdown impasse could define divided government over the next 2 years, and also serves as a likely preview of the next presidential campaign in 2020.
And still on the U.S. issue, as the partial government shutdown continues further, federal workers, maize a second-month paycheck, food banks, and other support organizations across the U.S. are stepping up to help the most vulnerable in this critical time.
The people who came to Barclays Center went home with pasta, sausages, chicken, produce, and milk, donated by Stop and Shop vendors.
So we have onions and potatoes in here that we repacked this weekend for our MLK Day of Service.
The giveaway was organized by Food Bank for New York City, which provides emergency food assistance to 1 in 5 New Yorkers.
What we're finding is, as a result of the shutdown, we now are serving newly vulnerable families who never would have envisioned that they would need emergency food assistance or support.
The location of this pop-up pantry at the Barclays Center, a sports and entertainment arena, was carefully chosen.
As we recognize that sometimes there is a stigma. There's a stigma with getting access to emergency food assistance and other supports. And so we thought, what better than to take an iconic New York City location, a location that families may have come to and attended in the past and enjoyed a game or enjoyed a concert, and to say, this will be your introduction to the emergency feeding network.
Within just the first hour, 150 furloughed workers came through the food bank, walking past tables covered with plastic bags filled with produce, dry goods, and protein, as well as milk and bread. They all said it will make a big difference.
I appreciate this food bank today at the Barclays Center, because at least for the next few days I have something to cook for me and my child.
We have savings, but it's only much that we could crunch, so I did save some money for rainy days, but it's already more, it's going to be a month already, and we don't know how long this is going to last, so it's becoming, whatever I got saved is becoming a little bit less and less every day.
Organizers say if the partial government shutdown continues, they will continue giving out basic foods to furloughed workers at different locations around New York every week.
The comments by Italy's Deputy Prime Minister accusing France of impoverishing Africa countries have continued to generate tension between the two European countries. Following the death of thousands of migrants in the Mediterranean Sea of Libya in recent days, migration into Europe is driving a wedge between France and Italy.
Already frosty relations between Paris and Rome have taken an icy turn. France summoned the Italian ambassador to explain these comments made Sunday by Italy's Deputy Prime Minister.
If today we still have people leaving Africa, it's due to several European countries, first of all France, that didn't finish colonizing Africa.
Di Maio accused France of impoverishing 14 African countries that use the CFA franc, a colonial-era currency underpinned by the French treasury, and forcing people to flee to Europe.
The actual benefits of the CFA franc are disputed by economists. However, Di Maio's criticisms aren't really valid. Now, there's two reasons for that. One of them being that people arriving into Italy at the moment, the latest data suggests they are not from countries using the CFA franc. And the second point is that in any case, as countries, if countries remain poor, migration is actually lower.
The Franco-Italian dispute follows the drowning of hundreds of migrants off Libya in recent days. The deaths have renewed the focus on Italy's decision to end search and rescue operations in the Mediterranean and the EU's failure to share refugee quotas.
Italy wanting France to take migrants who arrive on its shores, or at least part of them, and also disagreements over how to handle Libya, with Italy and France backing different sides in the Libyan civil war.
President Macron has not responded directly. He has sought to renew EU momentum with a new Franco-German treaty signed Tuesday in the border town of Aachen.
Les eurosceptiques, les nationalistes.
The Eurosceptics, nationalists, benefit from the fear in Europe's people, and they say the answer on your fears is nationalism, and we don't believe this.
The dispute is a taste of what's to come as populist forces like Italy's Five Star and La Liga join battle with pro-Europeans.
This contraposition has been created whereby Italy is the populists and Macron is the Europeanist, and it suits both sides in a sense to have each other as the bogeyman. Of course, this is especially important in light of the upcoming European Parliament elections.
Those election campaigns are expected to be bitter, with migration at the heart of the debate over Europe's future.
And Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has challenged the online news organizations to either develop the means to regulate online media or risk becoming an enabler of fake news. The Vice President, who was addressing journalists and online news practitioners at the 3rd Annual Open Conference in Nigeria, said that the digital technology and the internet have expanded the principle of press freedom.
At its best possible time, and also possibly its worst time. It's the best time for the free press because digital technology and the internet have landed the ultimate definition of freedom of expression. All of us can access and even own a medium. Any medium of communication is open to us now. But it also means that anyone, even a crazy person, a completely insane person, an anarchist, can use any medium on the internet to spread inciting messages, hate speech, distorted facts, or just false news, or fake news, as it's called today. The media can then either be a responsible gatekeeper, in the light of this, or an enabler of fake news. At the moment, the latter sadly appears to be the case, mainly because no importance is attached to fact-checking. So more often than not, the media, and the new media in particular, with more damaging effect, has proven to be enablers and amplifiers of unverified information and news. Some of it is harmless, some of it may not have much of an impact, but there is a considerable amount of it that can cause great harm. A situation in which all that is reported is what people say without bringing scrutiny to the issues at stake is untenable. So if a politician, for example, cites a figure, say a politician says Nigeria's debt profile is 30 trillion, or poverty rate is 100%. While it is the duty of the media to report what the politician said, it's even more important to situate it within the context of the actual or verifiable truth. What is the truth? Because the truth is also verifiable. This applies to statements that even might be deemed offensive as well, perhaps to an ethnic or religious group, what is known as hate speech. So somebody just passes out information there, whatever the information may be. What I tend to see, and this happens also with old media, traditional media, but more damagingly with new media. Years ago, I was Attorney General in Lagos State, and we were in the opposition. We declared June 12th a public holiday. The federal government said May 29th, but we declared June 12th Democracy Day and a public holiday. Federal government said no, May 29th is the Democracy Day, and that we had no right to declare a public holiday. That Lagos State had no right to declare a public holiday. We contested. I called the press, showed them the law. There's a Public Holidays Act, which says that a state can declare a public holiday within its own jurisdiction. What a state cannot do is to declare a federal public holiday, a national holiday. but you can declare a public holiday. If I like, as a state governor, I can declare 3 days of public holidays, even 1 week, so long as it's within my state. And we showed all that, cited the place, made copies and gave to the press. When this was going to be reported, it was reported as Attorney General of Lagos State says that Lagos State can declare a public holiday. Federal Attorney General says, not true, Lagos State cannot declare a public holiday. So the controversy continued. Despite the fact that one had taken the trouble to even give the. So what we're experiencing today isn't new, that's the point I'm making. That time and time again, the press, and when you say the press is everybody who owns a medium or uses a medium. The press is just going to be so lazy about checking facts, so lazy. And it's a dangerous situation, and that is why in many ways our press is not where it ought to be.
With that report, we conclude the news roundup for this week. I'm Tunde Alabi. Thank you for being part of the program and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye. Democracy gives everyone the rights of expression, a passage to a world of freedom, a world that is free, that is fair, equitable, and that is just. But indeed, how just, fair, and equitable is democracy to the people? How economically free are the people in a world of globalization? Join the discussion, have your say here, live on BEN Television on News Punch.